And I really salute you. It's an honor to be here. It's very exciting. And I just want to salute the Green Party. Thank you for inviting us to your national convention. And as Jackie has said, my name is Penny Hess, and I am one of the Uhuru Three, along with Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Jesse Neville. And it is a great honor that we have Chairman Omali Yeshitela with us here today. I'm going to give a little overview, and then I'm going to bring the chairman on. Very, very, very excited and excited for people to be able to meet Chairman Omali Yeshitela if you have not met him already. And I wanted to start by saying that I am the chair, as was said, of the African People's Solidarity Committee, the organization of white people under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. And we are assigned to go into the white community to work for reparations to African people and to build genuine white solidarity with the right of African people everywhere to be free and liberated and self-determining. And I salute my leadership, the African People's Socialist Party. I salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who has fought his entire life for the liberation of Africa and African people everywhere. I salute the National Central Committee of the African People's Socialist Party and the deputy chair of the party, Onizine Yeshitela. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute, but I wanted to say that the Uhuru movement believes that it is built on a foundation of the absolute truth that African people have have a right to regain their agency, their self-determination, their national sovereignty as a free and independent people, and the return of the resources stolen from them that were generated by centuries of stolen labor and stolen land. And we, I unite as a white person under the leadership of the African Revolutionary Movement that African people have a right to control their stolen continent of Africa, all of its vast resources, its history, and I salute Africa's leadership for thousands and thousands of years, has led the world, both in civilization, in knowledge, in every possible facet of life and society. And again, that, acknowledging that Africa is the richest continent on the face of the earth, but that African people are colonized both on the continent of Africa and inside the US and wherever African people have been forcibly dispersed around the world by this system of imperialism and colonialism. And that the Chairman Omali Yeshitela has defined the question of reparations. Back in 1982, the chairman held the first tribunal on reparations to African people in Brooklyn, New York, and had a goal not to just have an event or even this hearing with testimonies from African people in every facet of life, but to put out the question of reparations as a revolutionary demand, not as a favor, not as charity, but as the return of the stolen wealth of a whole nation of African people on the continent of Africa, which is their homeland, and wherever they have again been dispersed through kidnapping, enslavement, and colonization throughout the world. The stolen African wealth has enabled the US and Europe and the white world and capitalism to become incredibly wealthy and powerful, the leading imperialist colonial force in the world today. And that is thanks to this parasitic system that created the vast wealth of capitalism through slavery, genocide, and at the expense of African people, indigenous people, and the majority of the people on the planet Earth. And, I was looking at the book by the incredible African social scientist Sheikh Anta Diop called The Cultural Unity of Black Africa. And he called Europe the Northern Cradle as a sociological negative pole, he said, characterized by harsh geography, scarcity, and patriarchal aggression, in a stark contrast to Africa, which he called the Southern Cradle, which acts as a positive pole of abundance, peace, and matriarchy. And I think that that is a very, very, very powerful description of this difference between the colonizer and the colonized. And I wanted to just say also that Chairman Omali Yeshitela, as I said, held the first tribunal on reparations to African people in Brooklyn, New York in 1982 in a two-day trial of the United States, charging them with genocide using international law and with testimonies of many, many luminaries of the African liberation movement of that time, including Afeni Shakur, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, and many, many others, with the chairman acting as the brilliant people's advocate, talking about bringing the question of the conditions and the colonization of African people here inside the US to the world court for the first time in history. And the chairman cites the main problem facing African people not as racism. It is, as he has said, colonialism. He doesn't care about the ideas in white people's heads. He fights for political and economic power in the hands of African people, led by the African working class. The chairman teaches us that colonialism is the political and economic domination of a whole people by a foreign and alien state power for profit. And this is so true inside the US. The conditions of African people, the gap between the income, the infant mortality, maternal mortality, life expectancy, every facet of life. There is a huge gap between what the white community experiences and what African people are subjected to. The just to say average income gap in the United States alone, or let's say the wealth, the assets of the white family versus the African family. The white family has an average of $244,000 worth of assets, including their car, their house, their 401k. But African people have an average of 40 or $44,000. So that's a huge, a $200,000 wealth gap right there, in terms of everyday life. And the chairman has called these conditions the colonial mode of production. And it's really important that we understand that it is not, colonialism is not something from the past. It is not something, oh, the 19th century in other places around the world. The chairman has made it clear that colonialism is the DNA of the system that we live in, the social system that we live in today. He says there would not be an America, there would not be a US, would not be a Europe as we know it today without slaughter, plunder, rape, genocide, and pillage by Europe throughout North and South America, Africa, and Asia, and this conquering of the entire world. And I think that it is really, just so clear when we look at the world today, we can see that this is true. We can't deny this. The chairman has always built not he has never fought against racism. He has always built institutions of political and economic power that represent the interests and are led by the African working class. And he has built the Burning Spear newspaper, the longest African liberation newspaper in print, starting in 1966 till still published today. He has built the Uhuru houses, incredible centers of African political activity and thought and action in Florida, here in St. Louis, in Oakland, California. The deputy chair, Onizane Yeshitela, leads the Black Power Blueprint here in St. Louis with a basketball court, the Shambhala Uhuru Community Farm in a neighborhood in an area of North St. Louis in the African community known for its food apartheid or food desert conditions where there is nothing there, that they're building and ready to open very soon, the Uhuru Bakery Cafe here in North St. Louis. Everybody here should come to St. Louis and see this because there's no place in the country or even in the world where these kind of programs, revolutionary programs for the African working class exists. There is nothing like this. So it is very powerful. And I wanted to say also that the party has branches throughout the US. It has branches in Europe and throughout the continent of Africa, including in occupied Tanzania, which is South Africa, Sierra Leone, Congo, and Kenya, and other places throughout the continent. Um, and I'm laying this out to say who the chairman is, who I am under the chairman's leadership, and Jesse, and how we understand the world through African internationalism, the understandings that the chairman has put out that lets us begin to see the world through the eyes of the African working class rather than through the white ruling class of this country and of the world. And the chairman has spent his life fighting for Black people. And, in this case, the Uhuru 3 case, the state claimed that somehow suddenly in the year 2015, of all dates, the chairman suddenly became a Russian agent. And I mean, this is just beyond absurd. And the state knows it's absurd, but they have the power of the law and the state behind them. And that we understand that this kind of attack on the African liberation movement is a continuation of the kind of COINTELPRO counterinsurgency attacks that the African liberation movement of the 1960s experienced. As the US government made an attack on that incredible mass movement of African people, the uprising of African people of the 1960s. The goals of COINTELPRO are to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the Black liberation movement. And it included, of course, the assassinations of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton. And this attack today, this continuation of this terror that has gone on basically since African people have begun struggling for their freedom, which was the first minute that they were ever forced to do something they didn't want to do by white colonizers. So the Uhuru Three, meaning the Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Deputy Chair Onizane Yeshitela, um, my house, my roommate Kitty Riley, the Uhuru Solidarity Center, and upstairs the apartment with Comrade Jesse and Amanda, live in the apartment upstairs from that, as well as the car or the house of the director of the Burning Spear newspaper, Akile Anai, and the Uhuru House in Florida. 7 properties and homes of the Uhuru movement were raided by in each place by scores and scores of armed SWAT teams and every agency, of the military, US government um, in each place. And these raids began at 5 a.m. in all of these places. And, they stayed for 7 hours or 8 hours until almost noon. And the chairman immediately had a press conference to announce what happened, which was very, very powerful. A year later, this was in on July 29th, 2022. We were not indicted until a year later in 2023. We faced trial in Tampa, Florida in September 2024 on charges of acting as, quote, unregistered foreign agents of Russia and conspiracy to be unregistered foreign agents of Russia. And the charges carried a maximum penalty of 15 years in federal prison, effectively a death sentence for 84-year-old Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who was the primary target. We were we were acquitted of violation of 18 U.S. Code 951, which was basically failure to register as an agent of Russia or a foreign agent. Um, and we were convicted of 18 U.S. Code 371, conspiracy to commit an offense to defraud the United States, conspiracy to be a Russian agent. So, it was absurd. It was something to try to tie up the Uhuru movement, to force the movement to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. We were very fortunate to have a powerful team of brilliant attorneys who the chairman led, who we met with, month after month in the year prior to the trial. And the chairman gave them just a full background and political education of what the party stands for and winning them, that this was a political trial. Our lawyers included Addie Griffin, Mutaki Akbar, Leonard Goodman, Angela Rainey, Tom Inskeep, and they are so powerful. They are really comrades in every way. And as you know, we just came back from Atlanta where oral arguments were given for our appeal, were made. We had scores and even hundreds of people came out to support us there and have all along the way. So, the Hands Off Uhuru website is where you can see the appeal brief. I urge you to read it. It lays out all the legal arguments for why this conviction should be overturned. It's very powerful. And as the chairman said, this was an attack on free speech. As the chairman has defined it, anti-colonial free speech, the right of the oppressed to advocate for their freedom and national liberation and self-determination. So just to say, in the fight back in 2023, Chairman Omali Yeshitela formed the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa Fight Back Coalition, led by Chair Muezi Odom. And, we had so much support. We have support from literally hundreds of organizations, and over the period of the last 4 years, we have really thousands of people who have expressed their support in one way or another for the Hands Off Uhuru struggle and the Uhuru movement. So just to say, in our next steps, we are launching Hands Off Uhuru. Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Chair Muezi Odom will be launching a worldwide campaign for international human rights that unites anti-colonial and people's movements around the world, including Hands Off Uhuru has contacts with indigenous people's struggles throughout Latin America and South America, and struggles on the continent of Africa, and just, uniting the world in and all of the anti-colonial and people's movements is very, very powerful. We are also building an anti-FARA campaign, FARA, the Foreign Agent Registration Act, building political, public, even legislative efforts aimed at resisting the enforcement of the Foreign Agent Registration Act and the use of it to discredit organizations by accusing them of, quote, FARA violations. So, I just want to leave it there. We can discuss this more, but I want to be able to introduce my leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, and to say that Chairman Omali Yeshitela was born as Joseph Waller on October 9th, 1941, in St. Petersburg, Florida, where he grew up in an African community on the city's south side. And in the early 60s, the chairman was in the US Army stationed in Berlin, operating a tank at the Berlin Wall. And when he returned to St. Petersburg, he became an organizer for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. And in 1966, he ripped down a racist mural hanging on this huge, humongous mural that was right on the steps going upstairs in the City Hall of St. Petersburg, Florida, that portrayed African people in the gross caricature, just, a really, really offensive and colonialist picture that was there, and the chairman ripped it down in the 1960s. And for that, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison on federal offense. And he served, I believe, about 18 months of that. He was forced to serve in prison. And while in prison, he founded the Burning Spear newspaper, today the longest running Black Power newspaper in the world, now archived, by the way, by the University of Florida. So you can go to the archives, you can see what the party has recorded, all of its relationships, its analysis throughout these decades are there in the archives of the University of Florida. Um, the chairman founded a Black Power organization, JOMO, Junta of Militant Organizations, in the 1960s. In 1972, he founded the African People's Socialist Party. In 1976, he founded the African People's Solidarity Committee. In 1982, the chairman held the first tribunal on reparations to African people in Brooklyn, New York, with 12 sessions of that tribunal held subsequently over the years, with many, many African people testifying about the conditions of colonialism that they face. And the tribunals ruled that the US government owes African people in the United States alone $4.1 trillion, and that's in 1982 dollars. So, just showing all the ways that stolen labor of African people, African workers throughout the centuries has been stolen and must be returned to African people. And he popularized this reparations demand so that today it is a household word. Back in 1980, you didn't hear the word reparations. Nobody talked about that. The chairman introduced it and consciously did it as a strategy to introduce the question that reparations are owed to African people throughout the entire world. We see CARICOM, we see Africa, we see so many places now demanding and going to the United Nations, even demanding reparations. And the chairman has built the African Socialist International with member organizations throughout the continent of Africa, the Caribbean, the US, and elsewhere. And the party has member organizations in Africa, the US, and around the world. The chairman has developed the political theory of African internationalism, which analyzes and sees the world through the eyes of the African working class. So I'm very honored to introduce Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Uhuru. Chairman, you should yeah, there you go. And you should unmute Uhuru.
Uhuru. First of all, I really would like to express my appreciation to Comrade Penny Hess for the long introduction, but for the overview in general, I think is extremely important. I also wanted to express my appreciation to those of you who are here. I am quite aware that the reason we have been victorious up to this point in terms of our fighting back against this attack that's being waged against our movement, our party, by the United States government is because of you. The role that everybody who is in here in this meeting today played in making it impossible for them to hide the fact that while they were talking about some breach of the law, that we broke the law, they were simply using law to carry out a political mission. And that political mission is historic. It's been with us. And I want to remind people in the event anybody has the ability to overlook the fact that slavery was legal in this country. Trying to become free from slavery was breaking the law. And the fact that colonialism is illegal, it is force, it is repression, it is repressive. And so that's the thing that most of us have been involved in for the longest period of time. And so here we have this discussion that about free speech. And free speech, we're talking about the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, of course, as the Bill of Rights. I think that the Bill of Rights, I think that was they were ratified. It was ratified in 1797, something like that. But at the time of ratification, and I'm just trying to make a point here, at the time of ratification of the Bill of Rights, African people were property. So the whole presumption that may prevail today with many of the people who characterize themselves as leftists and socialists and things like that, the whole presumption that free speech, the Bill of Rights, something applied to African people, it is completely off base. And it is the basis, however, the fact that we were characterized as property, no difference from shoes and horses or chickens or anything else that white people own. That made it necessary for Black people to be in the vanguard of the struggle for free speech. We had no right to speech or anything else. So who would fight harder for the right to speak? And so for the right for assembly, for the right of association, and those for whom it has been absolutely denied. In fact, African people died as a consequence of speaking out. You've seen some of the graphics and photos of African people who have had masks put on, iron masks and things like this, covering our faces, our mouths, so that we could not talk. And by the way, I use the term African because that's who we are. You can't get on a ship in Africa as an African in 1619, like they like to start as a beginning of our relationship to the United States. You can't get on a ship as an African in Africa and then get off the same ship in Jamestown, Virginia, as something else. If we were Africans when we got on the ship, we were Africans when we got off the ship. Nothing changed with that, and that's part of the contradiction that we're looking at today. So I'm saying a lot of this because I think it's extremely important as we talk about the case of the Uhuru Three that threatened 15-year prison sentences, $150,000 fines, which is ridiculous. I mean, it's absurd. It's obviously an assault on our capacity to exist as an organization. That was the intent. It's an assault on our ability to carry out the dual power programs that negates colonialism that we are confronted with here in the United States. That's what it's all about. Take away the resources and imprison the leaders and initiate terror against our communities. Because when it came for us on July 29, 2022. They didn't just attack our homes and offices. They attacked entire communities. They blocked off the African communities in north side of St. Louis, where we live, and in the south side of St. Petersburg, Florida, where Deputy Chair Omali Yeshitela and I have homes. This is where we came from to St. Louis, and so they didn't simply attack our offices. They attacked our whole communities, and they knocked down they broke every door at the Uhuru House in St. Petersburg, Florida. They rifled our files and stole various kinds of financial records, and they stole all of our recording devices, our communications devices, and what have you. So this is part of the assault that they made against us. I was 82 years old, I think, at the time, and I don't know if they thought they were attacking Rambo or something like that. But I do know that when they commanded that we come out of our house here in St. Louis, in North St. Louis, that upon leaving the house, I was greeted by armored vehicles in front of the house, by bright lights, by generally, and by targeting these laser targeting dots all over my chest. And it was clear that they were prepared to kill me. My wife, as she was exiting the house, was almost hit in the face by a drone that they were sending up the stairs. So this is something that must be understood. And this whole issue that we talk about free speech, and we say anti-colonial free speech because we say there's a special kind of attack that's being made against African people and those who defend the colonized or try to give support to colonizers. That's why they kill Palestinians, they attack Palestinians, trying to destroy Palestine, almost turned it into Gaza into rubble, even as they are making aggression on the West Bank, where people are not paying that much attention to it. This is part of the project of destroying capacity for people to feed, clothe, and house ourselves, which is what colonialism is all about. And so you have some people who have enough consciousness to be able and willing to stand up and call for free Palestine, to be able to say free Palestine from the river to the sea. And these are people who are also facing charges and being imprisoned because the support against colonialism. So I'm really glad to be able to be here with you because one of the contradictions that we've been confronted with historically in the African liberation movement here, not just in this country, but globally, is a kind of unwillingness for white people in general. And I'm using the term white people because that's how the colonizers define themselves as white. It has certain kinds of ideological significance. It obviously has nothing to do with the physical appearance of people who are characterized as white, but it's ideological. And it has, very serious implications. So this whole thing about white people and that was born through the process of denying the identity, the resources of the peoples of the world. And I want to remind people that what we're talking about is a social system. When we talk about colonialism, we are not simply talking about a policy of a particular country. That, for example, the state of this illegitimate white nationalist settler state of Israel may have initially been born and created the war against didn't create it, but participate in the war against the people of Palestine as a policy. But what has developed is that we're looking at more than policy. We're looking at a mode of production, as Karl Marx would call it. He had to explain, just as you do, when you are preparing to try to open a business or something like that. One of the fundamental contradictions you run into is what they call startup capital. Where do you get the money? How do you start this thing? You have great ideas about making a lot of money, but how do you start it up? And Karl Marx talked about this being this thing called primitive accumulation of capital. He said it's not something that was born from capitalist production, that is to say, this accumulation of capital. But he said that we have to suggest that this primitive accumulation is something that preceded the capitalist production. And he said that this primitive accumulation, this accumulation of capital, massive amounts of capital, he decided, was something that played in political economy the same role or the equivalence of original sin in theology, that this is the starting point. And he decided that what this was, among other things, was the brutal war and rape of what was known as East India, the internment of the indigenous people, the so-called Aborigines, in what is now called America, and working them in the mines to bringing up gold and silver. And he said it was transforming Africa into a warren for the commercial hunting of black skins. He said these are the rosy, idyllic process that gave birth to capitalism. Well, what he just described was colonialism. We call it a mode of production. It is not just something that had significance as it related to developing Europe, white people. It had implications for Africans and colonized peoples around the world. It was a part of what defined our reality, our relationship. It was a mode of production. And it was a mode of production as inferred by Marx upon which everything else relied. It was a mode of production. You can't even imagine the existence of something called capitalism without the assault that was made and continues to be made on the indigenous people here in what is now called the Americas. You can't even imagine. It's impossible to imagine the existence of this thing called capitalism without the assault that was made on Africa and African people. So this is why we always said that the road to socialism is painted black. And it's really important for many of you who call yourselves socialists to understand this, that this is what we're talking about because it was colonialism, a foundation of colonialism that upon which all of the other activity rely, and that the political and economic configuration of the world today that we live with has its origin in this attack on Africa and colonialism, and which is why, you look up and you see where are the wars being made that people find themselves having to protest against. It's against people in Venezuela. There was no such thing as Venezuela before the kidnapping of African people, the forced removal of African people from Africa. There was no such thing as Venezuela. Venezuela came into existence as a colony as a consequence of African being shipped against our will to this place that's called Venezuela. This is where the borders came from. That we look at throughout what is characterized as South America. The name itself betrays the colonial history that's associated with the oppression and exploitation of the people on that landmass, etc. So this is what we were talking about. So when they arrested us, they they attacked us because they knew that what we represented in part was assault of the fabric of the mode of production, colonialism being ripped, and it was being ripped by what was happening in Venezuela. It's being ripped by Cuba. It's being ripped by what's happened throughout Africa. It's being ripped by the peoples of the world and occupied Palestine that they refer to as Israel. It's being ripped by people struggling. It's being ripped in St. Louis, Missouri, by the Black Power blueprint and the work that we're doing here to bring food, clothing, and housing to the people. Because the people, to be colonized successfully, the people have to be absolutely reliant upon the colonizer. People have to even lose their identity. That's why you find in the United States, as an example, although you see evidence of a similar thing with Palestinians who even denied the right to be Palestinians. And you can be an Arab, but you can't be a Palestinian, because if you're a Palestinian, it is evidence of the crime that's being committed against Palestine. No Palestinian, no Palestine. And in the United States, what we find in this place that's called the United States, what we find is that the only hyphenated human beings are Africans, African Americans, Native Americans, Mexican Americans, etc. The only time you see some other hyphenated person who is not Africa as somebody who also was colonized and who at one juncture who only recently became white, and that was Irish. And every year people pour green dye into the river in Chicago celebrating something about Ireland. And I just heard that's I think on today or yesterday something happened in Ireland that shows that the struggle there continues to occur. It's resonating even today. So this is what we are looking at, and I just wanted to be able to say it's really important, and I'm really happy that the people who are in this meeting, most of you, play some role in defending us. But I want you to be able to see beyond simply the free speech and First Amendment. African people want to be free. We're just like every other human being on the planet Earth. We want to be in control of our own lives, our own destiny. So we want power over our lives. And there are many who would prefer us simply to struggle to make white people like us. That's what they call the fight against racism, to make white people like us. And what we are fighting for is to be a self-governing, self-reliant people in charge of our own affairs, being able to know that our children will have a future, not because some good white man gets elected or some good Negro who has been appointed, held up by white power, the colonizer, is has been elected. We have to be able to say that our children will have a future because that future is in our collective hands. Now, having said that, I really want to say that it's important to us that it's recognized that we are one African people. We are the only people who did not come here looking for a better way of life to this country. We lost a better way of life as a consequence of having been kidnapped and forcibly dispersed all around the world. And you know, as I've said before, you can't leave, you can't be an African in Africa until you get on a ship and come to someplace else. You know, how the hell does that happen? What kind of magic is that? That's Star Wars or something, Star Trek. You know, we were Africans when we got on that ship. We were Africans when we got off the ship. Nothing has changed that. And one problem that exists today is that the memory of being African people, being in charge of our own affairs, continues to exist within the African community globally, everywhere. We are in what is called South Africa. We are in what is in Namibia. We are in Nigeria. We are in various other places on the continent of Africa, Sierra Leone, Ghana. You know, we have a presence there. We have a presence in England and a presence in France. And we have had presence in Germany and in Sweden and in Belgium, etc. So we say that we don't believe in this concept of the so-called African American Revolution. We say we are the U.S. front of the African Revolution. And just as there is a Belgian front of the African Revolution and a French front, and the same thing is true in the various places on the continent of Africa as well. So I wanted to say those things and just to give you some insight on what it is that we are struggling for, because you need to know that. You need to be conscious of the struggle for real self-determination and the genuine struggle for socialism. If you believe in socialism, you can't get there without going down the road of the attacking and assaulting and destroying colonialism, which is the foundation upon which everything else rests. It relies on that. So those are the things that I would like to contribute. And I also finally, we were charged because I went to Moscow in 2015. I went twice. And this is when the US government claims that I became a Russian agent when I went to Moscow. Otherwise, why would you go to Moscow, right? And I went to Moscow because I wanted to, and I say this, I want to also say this, that you will not find Black people in this country with Russian last names. Penny Hess mentioned my name used to be Waller. That's not some African name. The names that we have been given, imposed on us, were names that were belong to people who presume to own us as property, as chattel, so to speak. But I went to Russia. I went to Moscow, and I went to Moscow because I was invited by a NGO there that they were holding a couple of conferences. And one of the conferences had to do with the right to self-determination of various peoples around the world. It was very highly people from various places around the world, but then white people from this country were there. And I went a second time on a similar mission My objective in going there was to end the isolation of African people because we could not get the kind of support and still do not get the kind of support in general from what is characterized as the white left in this country. And so we have to spread the word, of what is happening with us and why it's happening, because many people have come to the conclusion that after the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, et cetera, we are supposed to be free. But there are National Guards, as you know, in Washington, D.C. now occupying our communities. There are National Guards that are threatening to go in Chicago to occupy our communities. There are National Guards at the southern border to keep people from coming crossing that border into this country, which represents to the rulers of this country an existential threat by for a settler population that is fast diminishing and it has been determined to be a minority by 2045. The point is that we are colonized people and we are fighting to end that relationship, and we call on you, everybody, to unite with this struggle against colonialism. And if you can't do it, we understand that some people, feel that an existential threat to the loss of this American identity. But that's what we are fighting for. And I want you to know that, what we are fighting for. And again, we are genuine socialists. We are genuine socialists who recognize again that the road to socialism is painted black, and we mean this generically, like Malcolm X meant it when he said the Black Revolution was something happening, throughout America. Said the Cuban Revolution, that's the real Black Revolution. Vietnam, he saw as part of the Black Revolution and what we are involved in as African people here and throughout Africa as well. Uhuru, thank you.
Uhuru, Chairman. Uhuru, yes, the road to socialism is painted black. Thank you for that powerful, powerful presentation. And I know that we have a little bit of time left, and I wanted to open it up to see if people had any questions for the chairman. Any comments? I see a lot of hearts going up here of liking. And I just wanted to, I just feel like this had so much to think about, very deep and profound understandings that the chairman has put out about the conditions and reality of African people here and around the world, and the struggle against colonialism. So I wanted to see if there are any questions or comments. I see somebody with a one next to them. I don't know if what is that? Does that mean something? I don't know, but I don't know how exactly to tell. I guess you would put it in the chat if you have any comments. So any questions? What did you think? Did this challenge you? What did you think? Is this how you
Okay.
understand it?
Penny, can you hear me, dear?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. So here's the thing. There's a chat that has questions in it, but there's also a room full of people over here. So I
Oh, okay.
think we would take one question from the chat and then
Sure.
one from the floor. Does that sound good
Perfect.
for whatever time we have left?
Yes, thank
All
you,
right.
Jackie.
So I don't know whether Penny, if you see the question from there, or whether Kalia or who's on the line.
Let me see here. I see something from Virginia. Well, okay, I see. Okay, here's something. All right. It is saying, um, one question is, we Americans are not only white folks, or we Americans, not only white folks, must decolonize our minds. Chairman Yeshitela, wouldn't you say decolonization of the mind extends beyond racism? That is a question, Chairman.
Let me just say that we believe in the existence of society comprised of an economic base and what is characterized often as a superstructure upon which that relies on this kind of economic base. Those are the ideas, the ideology, even the legal system, and sometimes culture that we're talking about of a particular system. So if you have an economy that that functions born of slavery and colonialism and functions as a basis of that, then you'll have ideas that reinforce slavery, colonialism, etc. So, you talk about corporations. Corporations exist on stolen land, and they are built of value stolen by African people, etc. So that, people need to change their minds, and that's why I'm here. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think that changing your mind is really important. But I think it's really important to also lay out that the basis for how it is most of us think. And this, is there's a material basis for that. It's the nature of the economy, the economic life, the economic base of the society that is responsible for that. So while we believe in fighting bad ideas, that the primary target, the strategic aim, has to be in with dealing with the social system itself that relies on this kind of slavery and colonialism. I hope I didn't muddle that too badly. Uhuru.
All right. Well, yes, and another question is the problem corporations or the law? Corporations exercise free speech rights with impunity. APAC should be required to, my eyesight here, um, to register as a foreign agent. Dr. John
Well,
Stein,
first of all, I think you can't concede the notion of the right for foreign agents registration, period. Because once you do that, I mean, the colonizer still controls the law. It makes a determination who's going to be charged with that or not. And we don't think it's good, that kind of law. It's oppressive, and the colonizer will determine how that law is going to be applied in every instance. And that's one aspect of what it, and the other thing in terms of is it the law, but you know, when Nat Turner in 1831, I think it was, rose up with the slogan "A strike at night and spare no one," rose up to lead a movement to free black people here. When he was captured, a month or so later, he was actually put on trial. He was put on trial. And when he was put on trial, he was found guilty. And the problem here is that so he had the benefit of a trial. But the problem is that if he had been found innocent, even if he had been found innocent, he still would have been enslaved. So the question of whether it's the law, it's the system, it's colonialism, it's slavery. And that's the thing that he had to contend with, and we have to contend with. There's a way that we can raise these issues and struggles that is based on our need to preserve the system itself, and that's what you're talking about. The law and things like that that responds, to the existing social system.
Penny, I think we want to take someone from the floor here, but before we do, I
okay.
just quickly want to ask you about the outcome of Wednesday. If one of you want to answer that, how
Well, yes, thank you for asking that. On Wednesday, we were in Atlanta with our attorneys and many, many comrades and supporters, maybe even some people on this call here, to at the appeals court where there were oral arguments for our appeal against what the state did to the chairman, the attack on the chairman and the Uhuru Three. And it was, I think, it was just very, very, very powerful. Leonard Goodman read the brief, I guess you would call it, the statement, and the other attorneys, including Angela Rainey and Addie Griffin and Mutaki Akbar, had also worked on that, and all of the attorneys spoke, and they were very powerful. There was a couple of events hosted by Professor Natsu Saito and Ward Churchill at Georgia State Law, I guess it was Georgia State Law School auditorium, where we had two events there. It was, and it was very, very powerful. We won't hear the outcome of the court of, the appeal um, hearing, and that could take this whole year, or that could take several months. Appeals are not, decided upon quickly. So we will probably hear that maybe 6 months from now, the answer to that.
Well, some people felt like we did hear the outcome already.
Okay.
There were three appellate judges who heard this, and Leonard Goodman was the only one who presented. He's the one who authored more or less the appeal itself and asked for oral arguments. And the fact that they're even hearing the appeal, I felt like was really positive kind of thing. And the fact that they granted oral arguments, which they seldom do,
Mhm.
and was important. And it indicated, it seemed to suggest to us that there were some issues that the court felt needed to be resolved that were raised in our appeal. But during the presentation, as Leonard Goodman, the attorney, was trying to present the argument, he was continuously disrupted by the judges, and who tried to limit. Their intention was to limit the discussion not on the content of what it was that happened, but on the fact that the government says that we were working as Russian agents. And so it doesn't matter what it was happened beyond that. If we were working for Russian agents, then that's the basis for them holding up the prosecution. So that seemed to be what we were hearing a lot of coming from the judges. And that made took the air out of a lot of folk in terms of what our expectations were. But I'm not so sure because the other thing that happened was one of the judges asked a question, something else that we had raised, and that was whether how did the prosecution explain this split verdict that on the foundational charge, what we were found not guilty of being agents that without registering, and then on the other charge, we were found guilty of conspiring not to register to be a foreign agent. And so I felt like the prosecution became extremely tight-tongued when that came up and was unable to deal with that effectively. So I don't know, what it is. We know for sure this. A couple of things. Once our attorney was brilliant and bold. He refused to be intimidated by the judges. He didn't back down when they were asking, ridiculous kinds of questions, trying to push him into some kind of compromised and compromising position. They wanted us to have appeal based on I forgot how they characterized it. That the sentence was different. I forgot how they characterized it. But anyway, the fact is, I thought we did well. We had hundreds of people who came out. We had a great meeting before. A lot of people came out, law students, professors, etc.
Mhm.
They had we had so many people. They had to open up an overflow room. The overflow room did overflow as well. So there were a lot of people who were there, and think that made a big difference. So as far as I'm concerned, we won
Yeah.
already. Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you, Chairman. Yes.
So let's take a question from the floor before we have to close here.
All right.
Uhuru, Chairman and Penny, lovely to see you again. This is Barry Bender from New Jersey.
Uhuru, Barry,
Very,
how are you?
very.
How are you? I've asked the question before, and I know I agree with you, Chairman, that the rule of people having to register as foreign agents is ridiculous. But if you and Penny and Jesse were charged with being Russian agents, why aren't most of our people in Congress who are taking money from AIPAC being charged as foreign agents? And I've asked you this before. Thank you.
Well, yeah, that's the thing that our lawyer put forth. Lynn
Yeah,
Goodman, the lawyer, he was saying you got all these corporations and these people taking money from corporations, and
yeah,
the judges had introduced the whole issue of Israel as well, and some people feel like he was trying to suck us into that discussion as a basis for for making their own argument. But it didn't have anything to do with Israel, and it didn't, But this whole thing about the corporations is part of what was put forth, and the judges wanted us, based on this discrepancy, to say something about I forgot how to characterize it um about oh yeah, selective punishment or something to that effect, when it came to us. And but the lawyers had already talked about that and knew that that too was a kind of quicksand. To have gone in that direction would have meant that we never would have been able to win based on selective punishment or selective prosecution, which is what the judges inferred might have been a better idea.
And we will take one more, thank you. And we will take one more question from the floor, and then I would like for you folks to tell the people how they can get involved and give them some information on that. So,
Yes, I was agreeing a lot with the chairman's comments about colonization. And I think that a lot of people are still just coming around to the realization that money and influence have become the new ways that these more powerful corporations, lobby groups, so on and so forth, are able to colonize the whole of the Americas, the US, countries like the Venezuela. The Colombian president now is basically just a transplant from the US. So what I'm wondering is, would there be any room within the argument against the FARA proceeding to set some sort of threshold? Because I think a lot of people do see the influence of Israel and think absolutely there should be some way to register or identify those who are acting out of favor with the nations that they have infiltrated. But at the same time, it's ridiculous to just label someone as a foreign agent because they travel to some place. So is there room for there to just be some sort of threshold established that can qualify who is and isn't seen as a foreign agent within your purview?
Well, the way we understand it is that it's a ridiculous, the law itself was created as a political law. The law itself was created as a political law. And so we think that's really important. And the control of the political apparatus, the political domain, is the colonizer. The ruling class here controls that. And in terms of what has to happen with Israel, the best support I think we can give around that is support for the Palestinian movement, support for the right of the Palestinians to be free. This is the thing that ultimately is going to make the determination of the impact of Corporation APAC and all of those. That's where the struggle is. That's why in what we have done is created what we call a strategy of dual and contending power. We create our own power that contends with the existing colonial power. That's what the Palestinians are trying to do. That's what's being attacked. That's what Venezuela is all about. People taking back their own power inside this social system, and that's why they came under attack. I know you said something else is very, very important. But the other thing I would add to that is that we are also involved in building an international human rights organization that will link with oppressed and colonized people all around the world. We already have initiated a really good front in Latin America with different organizations and people, even in what some people refer to as the jungles in Ecuador and what have you. We're doing that kind of work. So the future of the world, of the people on this planet, is located in the colonial question. And colonized people, the way out of here is to support the struggle against colonialism. There's no way we can, somehow feel like we can cajole or otherwise caress or otherwise get the corporations and the ruling class and what have you to treat us right. It's not going to treat us right. And I just want to remind everybody that before we were talking about the corporate powers and things like that, I mean, was that responsibility? Is that how we got these concentration camps called Indian reservations? Did the corporations do that? As we have come to understand this question, corporate power the whole trade in black people. I mean, corporations were always associated with that because it's a whole economic project. Colonialism is an economic project, but I just think it's really important for us to understand that the struggle is, and there's no way that we believe it can be gotten around, is to support the struggle against colonialism. That's the question. The whole the class question is concentrated in the colonial contradiction, the colonial contradiction.
Uhuru Chairman, thank you. Thank you. That's profound. And I think that that's so important because we at the white population has to take a stand in solidarity with the anti-colonial struggles. That's what the future of the planet is.
Listen, let me just, I know we got to go. And, but August 29th, 2001, there was an incredible meeting that happened in Durban, South Africa. This meeting was a United Nations sponsored conference against racism. And this conference against racism that happened in Durban, that was boycotted by the United States and Israel, declared that slavery was a crime against humanity. That there is no, what do you call it, date within after which the crime is no longer relevant, and that those who are guilty of it can be punished and should be punished. And this was the determination. It said that black people and colonized people should receive reparations. That happened in 2001. And subsequent, as you've seen, the United Nations just recently declared that slavery, not corporatism, but slavery was the worst crime in human history. And here you had the majority of the peoples on the planet agreeing with that. The difference being, I think, something like 18 people who abstained, and Argentina, which is transplanted Nazism, the U.S.
US
and
Israel.
Israel
Yeah.
are being the ones who voted against that. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, history is moving in the direction that I'm talking about now. And
Mhm.
we're not going to be able to hang on to this situation that we have. We have to go where history has taken us. There's been a declaration by out of CARICOM, the Caribbean community, that African people are owed something like $131 trillion for reparations. This is how the rest of the world sees things. And we have to be able to see things how the rest of the world see them, as opposed to being blinded by this connection that we presume to have with the United States and the colonizers. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Uhuru. Thank
Very
you.
powerful. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So, Penny, do you want to tell the people how they can get involved, please?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I want to say, first of all, that people can go to handsoffuhuru.org and see everything about the Uhuru 3 case, all of the documents, all of the court, motions and everything that's been filed. The history of it is a very, very good website with all of our webinars on it and everything that we've done for the last several years about it, handsoffuhuru.org. Also, if people are interested in Uhuru Solidarity Movement, you can go to uhurusolidarity.org and find out more about white people working for reparations under the leadership of the African liberation movement and going and, fighting for reparations and unity and support and solidarity for the right of African people to struggle against colonialism and for freedom and liberation.
Thank you, Penny
Thank
and
you.
Chairman. It has been an honor to have you folks with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you so much. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
We are winning.
Let me take that down.